them back on about the trainings, the actual training and the composition and how we got there. But many of the points that Pat made, I've got to reemphasize because I can't reemphasize them enough because they are so essential. But I'm going to start out with giving you kind of, if you're not familiar with what career pathways from a training design looks like, what we're really talking about is taking traditional training programs and breaking them down into bite-sized chunks. Now, as Pat also referenced, it's stackable so that an individual can build upon those skill sets as they go, continue to build up. They're short term. We're trying, our initial kind of vision was to really push these in a shorter time frame so that individuals could engage, they could get a skill that can get them in the door. Maybe it's an entry level, or maybe it's just to upgrade their skills so that they have some workforce relevance, but then we can get them back to work. What we were experiencing, especially with the dislocated worker population, is they can't afford to take 2 years off to finish an associate degree. Unemployment doesn't carry them that long. Many individuals have a variety of supports, and maybe sometimes that support is savings, and it just doesn't last long enough. So we wanted to figure out a way that we could get people skills that are being requested by industry so that they're relevant in a short period of time and get them employed. And as you step back, again, kind of in the career pathway model, the issue is once you get employed, you might have to come back to the education to take another skill step up, but you may maintain your employment through that. You may disconnect from employment to take that skill gap or that skill enhancement, and then you're going to come back to the workforce. So it's all about continuing to build. But one of the other pieces that Pat referenced is our partners. Our partners are essential, and we can't emphasize that enough to you. And it's about finding the partners that you can dream with. And that's not an easy thing to do all the time, because you're putting yourself out there sometimes, and sometimes you're looking to bend rules or stretch a framework in ways that they haven't been asked to be stretched or bent before. And if you don't have partners that are willing to dream with you and see that vision, you're going to run into red tape, you're going to run into bureaucracy, you're going to run into all these things. So it was really essential that you have really great partners, and those partners are, our colleges have been essential partners, our economic developers have been really, really vital to us being able to do this, and the businesses. As Pat referenced, some of our projects started because we had 1 or 2 businesses that were really in a place where they needed help and they didn't know how to do it, and they were willing to come and work with us and be part of that prototype, and then they turned out to be our champions. And then they rallied their friends and their counterparts and their other industries or other companies in their industry. The next piece that I want to talk about is the evolutions. As Pat said, you start where you can get some traction. So we started in the middle, but each time with our partners, we get to a point where we take a time out. And you kind of step back and look at where you are and do some reflection, and then you figure out what's the next evolution. So if you're thinking about it in generations, I don't know, we're on generation 5 or 6 by now. And every time you gain something, and sometimes you may make a gain, and you may compromise something else, and so then the next evolution, you want to get that ground back, and then you want to bring something else to it. So our first projects really started in connection with the grant that Pat referenced, but they were really connected with the customized training division from the college. Because at that time, we couldn't move the entire college structure, but we had the business and industry, their customized training division, that was doing training at the request of business. So our issue was, well, if business is doing this for their incumbent workers, it's probably going to be relevant to an unemployed worker that's trying to get in. So that was our first traction point, was, okay, we know what's relevant, what we can package for a worker to make them relevant. But then our issue was, well, that was great, but it wasn't necessarily credentialed. People weren't getting transcripts out of it that are at the college to build on that whole stackable piece. So our next evolution was to work with the college to say, okay, how can we get these connected to courses that are offered as part of a program? And that was kind of the next evolution, was to get all of the competencies from these courses reflected in these chunked, modular, stackable types of training. That was a really big one. Our next evolution was, this was still available, but primarily was only available as we administer the Workforce Investment Act resources. It was only available to a small window of individuals. So we wanted to try to figure out how we could expand the number of individuals, but our resources weren't necessarily expanding. So how can we do that? Financial aid is one of those methods. If we can figure out how to engage financial aid to help offset the financial side of the training, great. Then we can bring in more people to these trainings, and we can offer these trainings to people besides just WA participants. So that's kind of the next evolution.